the isolation room concept initially was, for me, I'm just speaking for myself here, an anti-curatorial statement. And it just kind of evolved from, organizing group exhibitions, themed exhibitions, and sort of realizing kind of, I had this sort of, idea. It kind of came from an exhibition where I sort of looked at each of the works in the space and kind of looked at them and thought, is this a successful work by itself, or does it need the support of these other pieces? Does it need the support of the narrative? And this, for me, was, if I were to sort of pluck this from somebody's studio, is it actually a good piece? Or if I were to take this out of the exhibition, is it still a successful work? Can it stand on its own? And that's where that idea came from.
Let's get back to the anti-curatorial statement, the space of like, I am going to curate an incredibly singular experience. And thinking about how an artwork works in isolation versus how it works when it's supported by the mechanisms of art, right? So does the space, does the TARDIS-like space in the center of your house actually function like a gallery, or does it function to kind of create this perfect isolation where you have this sort of singular experience and are hyper conscious of that singular work?
I think at times people are hyper conscious of it, but I think it's more about being more aware of looking. So when you're sort of visiting a museum, you're sort of looking around at other people, or if you're at an art opening, you're sort of looking for that person And in this situation, what my hope is, anyway, is that the person is sort of spending time aware of the fact that they're looking at something, even if they don't like it, even if it's not good, even if they don't find it interesting, is that they've sort of made that they've sort of crossed that threshold of our front door. They've walked into the space, and now they're almost forced to spend time with it. And the best times are when somebody goes inside, looks at something, comes out, says hello, we get them a drink, and then they feel this sense of, it's like they almost feel like they have to go back in and look at it again, because they've come all this way and they've gone to this random neighborhood.
This one modest
exactly,
scale
that I love it when they go back in there and they just feel like they have to.
They're guilted into it.
Exactly.
Speaking of guilt, there was actually, we had a show with a photographer called Phil Chang, and he's now on the faculty at UCLA. And he makes a couple of, actually some separate bodies of work, and one of them is these portraits of fairly slender-looking, attractive women who are just kind of sitting there, sort of in front of the camera, kind of demure poses. And he makes prints, and he doesn't put fixative on them. So basically, once they're exposed to the lighting in a gallery, they fade to black, right? They essentially disappear. So what I think generally happens with this work is that they're put on show, and within a few minutes they faded and they're gone. So the isolation room had a tricky interaction with that, because what we do is, when nobody's really around watching the show, we turn the lights off in the room and kind of like it's sealed off. It essentially turns into a camera obscura. And what happened with this piece at the opening is that it slowly got darker and darker, right? And so people were feeling guilty about kind of being in the room with the piece, because it was that they were killing the girl in a sense by having the light on. And what ended up happening is it faded over, I think, a period of about 4 hours until it was almost all gone. And so we had actually people visiting it, and when they came later on, a few days later, there was like this kind of, oh my God, is she disappearing? Are we killing it? So it was like this kind of guilt. There was actually this guilt trip about, should we actually be looking at this picture at all? Because maybe if we're not watching it, it preserves. And we ended up sending it back to him before she had died. And this is the first time this had happened with one of his pieces that does this. So she was actually still visible. And so that kind of the duration actually played into it.